Well, good morning. Again, heart-to-heart talk with Jerry Brandt and some words of wisdom by the fireside here, just to share a little bit about giving this morning. One of the great struggles of my life, and I'm sure your life too, is how to give, when to give, where to give, how much to give. Why do we give? Why do we give in the work of the Lord? I like 2 Corinthians chapter 9. It really deals with a heart of generosity and giving. And it says not to give out of obligation. You know, I debate a lot about tithing. Am I supposed to tithe? I hear so many ministries say, hey, if you don't tithe, God's going to get it out of your car repairs and out of your home repairs. God's going to get it one way or another. That's not true. Come on. God's a God of grace. He puts it in your hands and your ability to how much to give and when to give and where to give. I hope you're a giver, because in chapter 9 of 2 Corinthians, it says, he that sows sparingly shall also reap sparingly. That's the principle right there. If you don't sow, you see, the only seed that multiplies, according to 2 Corinthians 9:12, the only seed that multiplies is the seed that is sown. So if you want to get a blessing from giving, you don't give to get blessed, by the way. God's not going to give back to you just because, and don't pressure God in your giving. Say, well, I'm going to give if you heal my son or something. You know, people try to make bargains with God over giving. Come on. Give out of a generous heart, a love for God. If you love God, you're going to love others. And if you love others, you're going to give to them. You're going to help them. And Paul's writing here about the Macedonians and preparing a gift and all that. And one of my favorite verses for giving is found in 2 Corinthians 9:8. Let me read it here. It's a powerful, powerful verse. And God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you, always having all sufficiency in everything, may have an abundance for every good work. Isn't that a powerful verse? God is able, in His grace toward you, to help you, allow you to give. And when you give, God says He's going to give you an abundance to give. I don't believe it's God's will that He just meets our needs. I tell people all the time, it's not God's will to meet your needs. Yeah, if all you want God to do is to meet your needs, you never have anything to give to others. I love to give. I love to give. God taught me through Mom Taylor back in 1985 on a nightly television program I had. She taught me the power of giving to the poor. And we went to the streets of San Francisco, and every Saturday I drove 100 miles each way down to San Francisco from up in Cameron Park, California, up toward Lake Tahoe. I drive 100 miles each way to do outreach for the homeless. It was a sacrifice. And you know what? For 7 years on the streets, I never got paid. Nobody came up to me and gave me money. We didn't take offerings on the streets to the homeless. But you know what? God supplied supernaturally all my needs. And Mom Taylor, which on my television program when she interviewed me, said, God's calling you to go to the homeless, Jerry. I said, no, He's not. I was lined up in evangelism, had my own airplane flying around the country and doing evangelism crusades. And, you know, I didn't think I had time for the homeless. But 2 weeks later, after she prophesied to me on my television show, what happened? I'm on the streets. And I announced it on TV, and I was kind of hoping nobody would show up. That way I could just go down there and say, well, it didn't work anyway. I got down to the Methodist stairs of the church where we told everybody to meet in downtown San Francisco. And like 150 people are standing there with food and clothing. And that began our outreach. I found that people in Northern California wanted to help the homeless. And so I'd call Mom Taylor every once in a while. Pop Taylor had died, and she was all alone. And she had this big feather bed when God came to her and said, Mom, I'm going to be your husband now. You're going to depend on me. I'm going to take care of you. So I'd ask Mom Taylor when I called her. I watched this. This is really funny. I'd say, Mom, how are you doing? She said, Jerry, how would you be doing kept by a rich Jew? Jesus, of course, was her husband. How would you be doing kept by a rich Jew? And she taught me something that I wrote in my Bible, and I never forgot it. She said, Jerry, your ability to give is not based on what you have. It's based on God's ability to supply. Let me repeat that as I close this short talk. Your ability to give is not based on what you have. It's based on God's ability to supply. So she said, Jerry, the only reason you don't give is if God's broke. I said, well, hello, how can God be broke? He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. The silver and the gold is his. David, when he prayed and donated 10,000 talents of gold to the temple, he says, Lord, all that I have is thine. So he gave willingly, and he gave so much the princes of Egypt, or of Israel, came up, and David literally had to tell him to stop giving. He said, we have more than enough. What if your pastor got up Sunday morning and said, listen, our account is full. Let's just not take an offering today. That's what David did. Listen, your ability to give is not based on what you have. It's based on God's ability to supply. And he always, always multiplies the seed that you have sown. Well, listen, we have this daily fireside chat. I call it heart-to-heart talk now. And I'm really revealing my heart because there have been a lot of questions in my heart over the years about giving. Should I give out of obligation, out of legality, or out of generosity? I love the way this chapter ends. 2 Corinthians 9 ends with this verse. Thanks be to God for his unspeakable gift. When God gave, he gave the best that he had. He sowed a seed in the ground. It died, the burial of Christ, and resurrected to new life. And look at the multiplication of God's seed. See, he practiced what he preached. Look at the multiplication of God's seed that he sowed. So just be generous. And by the way, we're putting a donation button, on Facebook as well. We ask you to support our ministry, not out of obligation. If you like wisdom that you're learning on these little talks, if you like the teaching of the word that I do nonstop, it says, let him who preaches the word live by the word. So I would appreciate it if you just join in with our ministry and give, not out of obligation. And I'm not going to guarantee you if you give 1,000, you're going to get 100,000 back. I don't know. But if you love the word of God going forth to the nations, then would you consider helping us and donating to this ministry? God bless you, and you have a fabulous day. Listen, God will never let you down. He hasn't in all these years, 60 years of ministry, and 80. In 2 weeks, I'll be 80. 60 years of ministry, God has been faithful. There have been hard times. There have been short times. There have been abundant times. But I say this, your ability to give is not based on what you have in the bank, what you have in your house. It's based on God's ability to supply. And believe me, he's good at that. God bless you.